Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's video, where there are new rumblings of excitement in the Far Cry community, because just recently the Far Cry 6 trailer dropped at the Ubisoft Forward on the 12th of this month, and let me tell you right now up front, it looks amazing. It looks like it will not disappoint. I'm going to show you guys the trailer just in case you haven't seen it. You can go ahead and skip to the time on screen right now if you've already seen the trailer and you just want to get into the breakdown of the trailer. First off though, I do have a quick disclaimer. I don't want anybody to get too overhyped for the trailer because recently a lot of game developers have been getting players very overhyped for their games, and then the games never live up to the expectation. I am very hyped for this trailer, I will tell you that. But I'm trying to keep in mind not to get too far gone from reality so that when the game finally does come out next February, it's still going to be an enjoyable experience and I won't have elevated it to a level that it could never possibly be. With that said though, I think we're going to go ahead and get into the very first trailer for Far Cry 6.
Fuerzas ultrapenetrantes, estamos cansados de los farsantes, de los...
It's beautiful, amigo. Perfect, but useless. I have something for you, Diego. Give me your hands.
Papa,
Now, the grenade is simple. It has 4 basic parts. The shell, which contains the explosive, the fuse, the handle, and of course, the pin.
What are you doing?
Breathe, Diego. Breathe. The pin simply holds the handle in place. It is only when you let go that this grenade goes boom. Follow me. Now. I am El Presidente, which means that someday you will be El Presidente. And our people, they do not know how to be happy. They are torn apart by opinions, noise, indecision, strangled by their own freedoms. And even if you have love in your heart, even if you want what's best for them, if you only want to save them from themselves, they will hate you, Diego. Everything you say, do, believe, will be wrong. They will answer you with screams, call you evil, a monster, and give you this. So you tell me, are you evil? Are you a monster? Because our country is like this grenade, except it has 2 basic parts. Our people. And you must clutch them nice and tight, or we all go boom. Do you understand now? Prove it.
If that trailer was a sign of things to come, then Far Cry 6 is going to be one of the best, if not the best, Far Cry game ever released. I have a lot of points to talk about here, a handful really. But the first thing I just want to point out before we get into any of the more detailed points is I am very hopeful for Far Cry 6 because of the fact that this trailer was a solely story-driven trailer. There was no gameplay, there was nothing about gameplay. And I think that is very promising to the future of Far Cry 6 and the Far Cry series in general. The fact that the developers chose to lead with a story-based trailer and not something about gameplay leads me to believe that the biggest selling point for Far Cry 6, the thing that's going to make Far Cry 6 an amazing game, is going to be its story. Now, I'm hopeful that we have some really good gameplay, and gameplay that is better than the previous Far Cry's even, and improved upon mistakes that were made before or removed, all that stuff. I hope that has all been improved. But the fact that they lead with story really gets me hopeful, because what the Far Cry series has always done well, and especially since Far Cry 3, is being a character-driven story mainly about the antagonists. I mean, you look at the last two Far Cry games, the protagonists were basically completely removed. They had very little story to them, and they were silent. So they did not really add to the story much. They were simply just a player character. That was all the purpose they served. And the story truthfully was about the antagonists. I think in Far Cry 5, they definitely tried to bring the player into the shoes of the deputy more than they did in New Dawn, trying to bring the player into the shoes of the security captain. But still, I think that Far Cry, especially since Voss, has always been about the antagonist. It's always been about the bad guy. And they've shown us here with this trailer that they've got another great bad guy set up and another amazing new world for this bad guy to be in control of. Let's get into a little bit about that new bad guy. Anton Castillo. It's a name we're all going to be getting familiar with over the coming months, and then obviously in February when we finally get the chance to play Far Cry 6. Castillo is the newest antagonist to the Far Cry series, and he's going to be, at least by my speculation, much different than any other antagonist we've ever come up against. If we think back to two of the better known antagonists of the Far Cry series that I'm going to use as an example here, Voss from Far Cry 3 and Joseph Seed from Far Cry 5, we look at them and they are sort of, up to this date, what a Far Cry antagonist has embodied. Psychotic seeming, are very loud, very in your face. They're also very aggressive towards you. All their mannerisms are aggressive. Joseph Seed sways more to the calm side when he wants to. But truthfully, what you learn is that he's really not a calm man. He just sometimes puts an act on to appear as a calm man, mostly in front of his own followers and not in front of you, the player. It's how he deals with those who are a member of his cult. But we really learn that Joseph Seed is an angry and violent man. Voss, on the other hand, is very loud and outgoing, but more leaning to that psychotic side of things. He is, again, very in your face, and we actually learn that Voss's sort of loud and boisterousness is more of an act than his real side, where he really just wants to be a good person, but simply just can't. Anton is going to bring a new layer to this Far Cry villainy. He is going to be one of the first characters that I believe will be very cold and very calculated. Don't get me wrong, he's going to be a cruel man. I don't believe that he will act in anger like Joseph Seed or act out of psychoticness like Voss. I think he will act in a way that he has thought out and is determined to be his best course of action. Relate Anton more to a high-level chess player. He can react quickly to anything that happens, but he reacts very calculated. Every move he makes, he knows what to do for the next 10 moves based on his first move. And I think that will make Anton a very interesting antagonist to take down as a player. I also believe that he will be calm most of the time. Look at the way in the trailer he talks to Diego. He never seems to get up in arms or angry. And yes, he is just talking to his own son and not some sort of enemy of his. He's trying to teach his son a lesson. But the way he handles a situation that is so very tense with such a calm attitude towards it, I think is more than just confidence. I think it is truly who Anton is. I think he will be a calm man. We won't have scenes of him yelling at us and having outrageous outbursts, or at least not in the same way we've seen with other characters based out of anger or psychotic fits. I believe the player character will also have to outsmart Anton to beat him. Unlike, again, with Voss and Joseph Seed, we simply just took the fight to them. We showed up with superior force or whatever it may be on that occasion. Using Far Cry 5 as an example, the idea was we riled the people of Hope County up to defend their lands against this intruder to it, Joseph Seed. And we were able to push him back and take it back from him through that riling up of the people. I don't think that will quite work with Anton. He's expecting riled up. He's already facing an enemy that is riled up, that is already to the point of violent revolution. And he seems to be handling them decently well up to the point of the game starting. At least in the trailer it appears this way. His presidential palace seems to be very calm on the inside, while the outside, there's fires being lit, people being killed, just violence all around. And Anton seems to just have a indifference to it. He's going to lead his country the way he wants to, and he's not going to let these people tell him differently. And that's why I think we will have to outsmart him. We won't be able to just come up against him with great force. I think that will be a part of it, but I think in the end, there will be times when we will have to outsmart Anton and outsmart his calculations and his plays. And I think this will bring a new taste to a Far Cry antagonist. It will be very interesting to see how Anton plays out. Remember, this is all speculation based off about a 2-minute trailer, but just from what I'm deriving from this trailer, that's what I believe so far. Obviously, in the coming months and up to release, things can change a lot, and we'll talk about those as they happen. Moving on now to the second person we were introduced to, less so than Anton, but still introduced to well enough to get an idea of who he is, and that is Diego, Anton's son. Anton's son seems to be a rather young child still. I'm gonna guess 10 to 12 years old. Diego seems to be very impressionable at the moment, and I think that's going to be a big part of the story. Diego being impressionable is going to allow him to be manipulated by his father and probably other characters in the story as well. Diego's not going to know what to do. I believe he could either turn into an ally to the player or an enemy, and we may not know what he is up to the last second. And having this sort of wild card character is another thing that I think is very interesting. We don't really know what Diego's going to do because honestly he doesn't know what he's going to do. He lives in a way that seems somewhat sheltered from this violence in his country, this uprising. And his father is going to try to introduce him to this world in a way that shapes his view of it to be very against these revolutionaries. But I'm not sure, just by watching the trailer, how receptive Diego is going to be to that story. He had the grenade in his hand. We didn't see if he threw it or not into the crowd of people or what he did, obviously. When he was given it, he seemed scared. I mean, as anybody would, but in a different way than just being scared of the grenade. He was very scared of the grenade, but almost more scared of his father than he was truthfully the grenade. And I think this is going to lead to some very interesting storytelling when it comes to Diego. He is going to be sort of the right-hand man character to Anton. He is going to be what John, Jacob, and Faith were to Joseph Seed in Far Cry 5. but the fact that he's a little bit more wild card is really going to make this interesting, I think. I really can't say right now where I truly think Diego will end up, and honestly, I hope I can't say that until I play the game and I know for fact, because I don't want that to be spoiled. I think Diego needs to be sort of kept out of our minds until we play the game. He's going to be a pivotal character. I'm hoping there's some big surprises to come with his character. The final thing that we've been introduced to in the first trailer for Far Cry 6 is the setting of the game. The setting of the game is a fictional island country of Yara, which is currently embroiled in a very violent revolution against Anton Castillo, the president of Yara. Yara looks to be a very interesting country, and something, again, we haven't seen in a Far Cry game, which is an urban setting to a Far Cry game. I think that will be very interesting, especially since Far Cry has always relied on the stealth aspect. We'll now get to try stealth out in an urban environment instead of, middle of nowhere Hope County or little tropical islands in the middle of the Pacific. We have a new environment that is 100% different. If we had to try to draw some real world connections to Yara, I would say it's probably most closely related to Cuba or the Dominican Republic, one of these Caribbean island nations. The Spanish speaking and the look of the nation puts it there. Honestly, the closest connection you could probably draw is Cuba. Something else we know about Yara is how it looks like it's almost stuck in the past, but yet we see things that are very modern, and we'll get into the actual date of the game here in a minute. But this is caused by the fact that because of sanctions and blockades to Yara, which we learn about from the Ubisoft website for Far Cry 6, they have not been able to evolve with the rest of the world. They've been stuck in this location in the past. You look at the cars, you look at the environment, and it looks almost very 1950s, 1960s, as if that's about the time they got stuck in time. But I think this will become very important, because while Yara is a modern day country in terms of the gameplay, we'll also be dealing with a lot of old weapons and things like that. And I think that could lead to something somewhat like a prepper stash out of New Dawn and Far Cry 5, where armies of yesteryear have stashed weapons and we can go find caches of weapons and supplies. So that will be interesting within the setting to deal with, is dealing with sort of the age of everything, but also the same time that it's in the modern era. So there will be access to some modern thing. Now, when we look at the date of Far Cry 6, it leads to some interesting questions regarding the ending of Far Cry 5 and the whole game of Far Cry New Dawn. And that's the fact that if you go to the Far Cry 6 website, you will see two newspapers used as a background there. And both those newspapers have dates in 2020. One is the May issue of this newspaper in 2020, and one is the November issue in 2020. And the fact that the November issue is very much about the revolution and how violent it's got, and the newspaper seems to be supporting the revolutionaries more than being against them, that means this game will probably take place somewhere in late 2020 or early 2021. And that leads us to the question, what about the bombs? Clearly, the state of Montana has been bombed, if New Dawn is even canon at all at this point. It leads to a lot of big questions that I hope get answered honestly before the release of Far Cry 6, if not, are answered within Far Cry 6. I hope they don't just sort of act like Far Cry New Dawn and the ending of Far Cry 5 that they made canon by making a whole nother game about the ending of Far Cry 5 is true. There was nuclear bombs dropped on the state of Montana and all over the US from our ability to travel all across the US in New Dawn and see all these other places affected by the nuclear bombs. So there's a lot of questions to be had. Now, Yara being sort of a off the beaten path type country, maybe it wasn't affected by these nuclear bombs, but then how does the rest of the world, major countries like the United States falling and And other countries like Russia and many European countries that we know of have fallen. How does that lead to Yara changing? What is that about? There's a lot of questions about the nuclear war that's supposedly happened and how it's going to connect to Yara. Honestly, after New Dawn, I expected the next Far Cry game to be set in the past. And when I first saw Far Cry 6, I thought, okay, this is set in the past. Very quickly again, you realize it's not. It's set in, at the moment, the future, November of 2020, or a little later. So honestly, at the moment, the future for us. By the time we play it, it obviously won't be the future, it'll be present time. That's something that I think's a little interesting, and I'm interested to see how the developers work around the fact that in one game they blew up the entire world, and then the next it seems to be just a-okay. A lot of questions to be had there, and even if Yara wasn't hit by a nuclear bomb, they should have been hit by the nuclear winter caused by massive nuclear bombing, which means Yara should be heavily affected, like any other place in the world, by the nuclear war that happened just a year or two before Far Cry 6. That'll be very interesting to work out how all that works. Maybe New Dawn was a fever dream and we just didn't know it. I don't know. There's a lot of confusion here around that at the moment. I'm hoping that future trailers and future information about the game will explain it a lot more and we'll be able to understand it before it comes time to buy New Dawn. So now at this point, I have definitely talked way too long about a 3-minute video and broke it down way too much. Blame it on my excitement over the next Far Cry game. But I hope you guys are excited as I am. I think this is all we can really latch on to at the moment. In the future, as more information becomes available, obviously there will be more videos on this channel. So if you don't want to miss any of that, I'd appreciate if you guys could subscribe. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off right here, and thank you guys once again for watching today's video. I really appreciate it. It means a lot. If you enjoyed it, I'd appreciate a like, and let me know your thoughts on Far Cry 6 down in the comments. Thank you guys once again for watching today's video. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful day.